All right. My name is Mark Cohen, and welcome to Philosophy of History Cultures as Organisms, where we will look at the ordinary view of history as ancient, medieval, modern, and completely obliterate it, shake it up in a blender, and come out with a new way of viewing the world and maybe even time itself. We're looking at here sculpture, classical ancient Greek emphasis on physicality, corporeality, realism of portrayal. You notice a little something though, right? Particularly you students, or should I say pupils out there. That's a lack of them. Not a lack of students. Hopefully there's enough in the audience, but no, there's a lack of pupils. The eyes are said to be the seat of the soul. By whom exactly? By our culture, by modernity, what Spengler calls the Faustian culture. We gaze outward from this inward soul that you can see far into the future, or inner and outer. They're not there for the Greek. They're not showing the eyes, not because they don't believe in the power of the soul or anything like that. That's off limits to them. That's murky. That's ethereal. They're about the heart, the here and now. And if you're going to look into my eye and see my soul, no. That's personal space too. Let's continue here as we advance to our next slide. Which, here we go, section 1, being and beings. Oops, I'm sorry. Here we go, cultures as organisms. Now, Spengler developed a model which he called morphology. Morphology is about the study of forms and structures and the sciences. But Spengler, like many philosophers of the 19th century, in his case around World War I, when he writes his magnum opus, The Decline of the West, in 2 volumes, people like Hegel in the 19th century and Spengler and Heidegger in the 20th are looking for a way to make philosophy a real science, like we have with physics, like we have with chemistry, like we have with math, and that you put something in, you're going to get it out. You can tell what you're doing. It's not so murky and all subjective. Now, because of the nature of what we're dealing with in philosophy, basic existential questions, questions of meaning that are by their very nature, many people believe, subjective. How are you going to develop a purely scientific discipline? So when we look at the idea of history, or in this case, a philosophy of history, we kind of have a mixture of the two, and we'll see the tension between these. You have, on the one hand, history is the actual happening of events. We've all experienced history. We're all living it right now. And then on the other hand, the writing of history. You're going to select certain things to talk about. You're not going to talk about every minute of your day or everything you've ever learned. All history selects certain facts and it unselects for, if you will, certain others. In other words, history is a picture that is put together by a mind in order to highlight certain elements, to disfavor certain others. It establishes a point of view. Spengler calls it the nature picture. Ironically, most of the people writing history, it seems, are theorists, people who abstract from life. They say, hold on, I'm going to step back and be, what do they say? We say we're going to be objective. We're going to treat an event, say the Second World War, as an object outside of us. Freeze frame. Here are just the facts. Here are what happened. None of this is life. Life is what's happening right now. It's pulsating. It's a rhythm. It's bluing. It's growing. It's dying. It's born. It's crying. It's hunger. That's not what we're talking about here. So the historians, for the most part, are what Spengler would call nature people. A philosopher is a nature person. Why? Because nature for Spengler is a picture. It's not the actual environment. It's a conception of the environment that we have that we just assume is given. So anyway, most of the people who write about history for Spengler, they're philosophers or they're religious people or they're scientists. It doesn't matter. Religion, philosophy, and science. They all have concepts for the way that the world works, but they don't pretend that those concepts are the world itself. For Spengler, it's different. For the historical, he uses the word man, okay? It means, of course, women as well, but mainly in history, We're only talking about men because women were relegated to other tasks in most of these cultures, at least. So when we talk about historical man for Spengler, that's the type of person that's never going to, in their eyes, waste a moment writing anything down about history. Why? They're going to be living it. Now, these are extremes, okay? Spengler's point, one of his points, was that each of us has a dominant personality. It's either as a doer or a history type, or as a thinker, as a theorist, as a nature type. We should get to know which one we are, because what we do with the rest of our life is going to be conditioned upon doing what we're good at, but not mixing up what it is of what we really are. So in my case, I'm presenting to you as a thinker, as a philosopher, as a theorist. I would like to get you to understand history in ways you've never perhaps understood it before, and therefore you can experience and live it maybe in different ways. At the same time, I'm doing it through the form language of a presentation and of theory, and therefore as a nature picture. Spengler would say, if I realized that I was a practical man, I shouldn't be doing this. I should be giving speeches in politics, or building a dam, or a new type of engine, or something practical. Know thyself, going back to the Oracle of Delphi. Well, get to the Greeks in a little bit. They're not exactly the way we thought they were cracked up to be either. So what Spengler wants to do, his aim is to create the science we were speaking about, a morphological science. It's going to be like a correspondence system of all the main cultures that have existed. He's going to select too. Spengler is a nature thinker as well, whether he likes it or not, because he's selecting certain elements to come into a theory and a picture about life that is not life itself. He's aware of that, at least usually, it seems. Anyway, by having all these correspondences between cultures, we can start to arrange them as similar or different in ways we have never before imagined. How exactly we're going to do that? Well, usually the way for doing that is through the scheme ancient, medieval, modern. Simply put, if a culture appeared between the period of 3500 BCE and 476 CE, or the fall of Rome in the West, they're considered ancient. After the fall of Rome until roughly the sailing of Columbus and the great explorers around 1500 CE. That time period is often considered medieval. Since Columbus and the great ships take off around 1500, we call that modern. Now, different people will assign different dates to these periods and tell you when ancient, medieval, and modern cover, and they're going to be quite different sometimes. But in general, this is the picture. It presents history as this linear framework of progress, rises and falls. There is no discernible end. Everything is just cause and effect, pure happenstance. Now, there is another point of view of history, which is the religious point of view, which, if we talk about Toynbee in another lecture, we'll get to that, but we're not going to discuss that today. But the religious point of view does believe that there is an aim to which history is heading. We definitely actually will discuss that when we get into our Hegel lecture. However, for today, we'll start to deal with that a little bit once we talk about the idea of destiny and Spengler's idea of destiny. So we're looking at a scheme now is not going to be based on the simple, well, when did it occur? And I'll tell you what cultures compare with what. That's not what Spengler is saying. Spengler is saying cultures are like organisms. They have a birth date, right? They begin at a certain point in time. They achieve maturity. They begin to decline, and then they die out. That organic cycle, Spengler relates to the seasons, the birth of a culture and its adolescence, it's springtime, it's flowering, often violent, but the creative energies are flowing. This is when great discoveries are made, and great highs, low lows, terrible abuses, and amazing uplift are all kind of coexisting at that point in time. Then the culture reaches maturity, adulthood. Cultures are replaced by civilizations. As cities become built, people start putting down the sword and start picking up the lecture pen and the hat, and they teach and they learn. They become what we call, quote unquote, civilized. After which you have the period of decline It's beginning. It's the fall of the period of a culture, like a human being. They are older.